You ever watch someone lie with their whole body? Like, not just their words. I'm talking muscles, shoulders, hips, even how they blink. That's what she did, right in front of me. Camille, my wife, on his lap, on her boss's actual damn lap, wearing the dress I paid for, with the nails he probably financed, pretending she didn't see me walk in. She turned her head slightly, not too fast, just enough to make it look like a coincidence. Like, oh hey babe, didn't expect you here, even though I'd just handed my coat to the valet 10 minutes ago, and she knew I was coming. And Derek? That smug, jaw-clenched bastard? He didn't even flinch, didn't push her off. He just stared at me like I was late to a show that had already started. There was a half-finished glass of Merlot in my hand. For a moment, I considered slamming it into his face. Not in a movie way, in a ruin both our lives right now kind of way. But I didn't. Because I remembered something. 3 days ago, Camille had come home late. Said they had an off-site brainstorm at Derek's lake house. Her blouse smelled like expensive cologne. Her eyes were red. She told me not to make it about me. That she was tired. That I'm always suspicious because I hate myself. She wasn't wrong. I do hate myself. I hate that I said okay. That I kissed her forehead. That I went downstairs after she fell asleep and Googled how to tell if your wife is cheating and you're too much of a coward to do anything. Anyway, back to the party. The room went quiet. Not movie quiet, but the kind of quiet where everyone starts fake texting to avoid picking sides. Camille finally stood up from Derek's lap, slowly, like I was the one overreacting. Emmett, don't, she said, holding her hand up. It's not what it looks like. Which is hilarious. Because what it looked like was exactly what it looked like. I set my wine glass down on the counter next to a cheese board shaped like the state of Vermont. I adjusted my tie, the same one she told me made me look like a substitute teacher. And I smiled. Camille, I said, calm as a monk. I just have one question. She blinked. Nervous. Finally, I looked at Derek. Do you want this handled publicly or privately? He laughed. I guess that was his alpha move. Bad idea. Really bad idea. Because what Derek didn't know, what Camille forgot to mention, was that I've been working the night shift at the telecom warehouse for 4 months now. And for 4 months, I've been running backups of every email and every call from her work phone onto an old burner laptop she thinks is broken. She used to vent to me about how Derek never logs out of anything. She thought it was funny. I thought it was a gift from God. I pulled out my phone, opened the file labeled Lake House, Audio, WED 4 p.m. Wave, and hit play. Camille's voice, clear as a confession. God, I can't keep pretending with Emmett anymore. He still thinks we're just going through a phase. I can't even stand him touching me. I feel like I'm rotting when I'm near him. Then Derek's voice, deeper. So tell him. Or don't. You'll be here next weekend either way. The room froze. Derek went pale. Camille stumbled back like someone had unplugged her spine. I tilted my head. Privately, I asked again. Or shall I airdrop this to everyone here wearing a suit? No one spoke. I smiled wider. And for the first time in years, I felt something warm inside me that wasn't shame. Nobody said anything for at least 30 seconds after I hit play. The audio kept rolling. Camille's voice, sweet and venomous, dripping with the kind of honesty people only speak when they think no one's recording. Her words cut sharper than any insult I've ever heard to my face. And Derek, his voice sounded like every smug gym rat who's ever winked at a woman right behind her husband's back. I had it all. The lake house confessions. The hotel voicemail. Even the phone call where Camille accidentally said, "Love you," at the end, and then tried to laugh it off. But I didn't play the rest. I didn't need to. By then, the crowd had already started pulling back. Not saying anything. Just slowly stepping away like they didn't want to be caught in the splash zone. The only sound was the gentle hum of jazz music, still playing through Derek's built-in Sonos system, completely unaware that its owner was about to drown in social fallout. Camille's face was blank. Not crying, not yelling, just blank, like a TV that got unplugged mid-scene. She opened her mouth twice before words came out. Emmett, can we talk? I tilted my head. Now you want to talk? I never meant. Didn't mean to get caught, or didn't mean to call me rotting flesh in high definition. I asked. Her lips trembled. Derek stepped in front of her, protector mode, I guess, and raised his hands like a referee. Look, man, he started. You're clearly emotional. This is not the place to. Finish that sentence, I said, eyes locked on him. Please. Say literally anything else. He hesitated, and I swear I saw his pupils shrink. Because here's the thing. Derek thought I was the weak one. The quiet, blue-collar husband of the hot real estate executive. The boring tag-along. The vending machine guy. What he didn't know is that quiet men don't mean soft. They mean dangerous when pushed too far. I took a deep breath. Then, calmly, I reached into my pocket again and pulled out a flash drive. See this? I asked, holding it up between my fingers. It's not just audio. It's spreadsheets. Emails. Proof of money being moved through company accounts for client entertainment that was, in fact, used for hotel stays with my wife. Derek blinked. The panic started to show. Oh, I added, and I forwarded it to your compliance officer about 2 hours ago. BCC'd your board of directors. Also, there's a guy named Joel who keeps sending you invoices for photography equipment you never declare on your reports. Weird, right? I didn't need to say more. He knew what was happening. He was being dismantled. Not in front of cameras. Not with fists. With documents. With emails. With his own mistakes. Camille looked between us like she was realizing for the first time that she'd backed the wrong man. Emmett, please, she whispered. We can fix this. I smiled again. You fixed it already, I said. You and Derek fixed it so thoroughly, I don't have to lift a finger now. HR will eat him alive. You'll be subpoenaed as a witness. And your name, Camille? Your name will live forever in the fine print. A few people gasped. Someone said Jesus Christ under their breath. Derek turned white. He reached for my arm, maybe to stop me, maybe to beg. And I didn't push him. I leaned in and said quietly, next time you touch someone else's wife, make sure she's not married to a guy who repairs security cameras for a living. Then I stepped back, and I hit play on the next track I had queued up, not an audio file, but a remix I made of Camille's voicemail layered over romantic jazz. The room echoed with her breathy words. Derek, last night was everything. I haven't felt that alive in years. Looped over and over, like a playlist for shame. I left it playing as I walked out. I didn't say goodbye, didn't even look back, because for the first time in forever, they were the ones left speechless. And I had only just started. By the time I got back to my car, I realized I hadn't stopped shaking. Not from fear, no, from release. It was like I'd just emptied years of humiliation, suspicion, and silent pleading onto a silver platter and served it to them in front of everyone they'd been trying to impress. All those nights I'd stared at the ceiling while Camille worked late. All those sick stomach knots I'd swallowed when her phone buzzed and she smiled before flipping it over. They'd been building toward that moment. And now, the tower was starting to fall. But I wasn't done. I didn't want to just burn their house down. I wanted to make sure they could still feel the heat weeks later. Because here's what no one tells you about being cheated on. It doesn't just hurt your heart. It shatters your identity. It makes you question the smell of your own clothes, the way you laugh, the weight of your silence. You start to think, maybe I am boring. Maybe I did deserve this. But not anymore. I wasn't that man now. Not after what I had planned next. The morning after the party, I drove to work like it was any other day. But my shift supervisor, Randy, knew something was off the second I stepped into the maintenance bay. You okay, Em? I nodded. Just fixing things. He laughed. That's your job, buddy. Not just machines anymore, I muttered. The thing about working in maintenance for a corporate telecom company is, you see things most people ignore. Every office camera, every motion sensor, every keycard reader. I'd fix them all. I knew which buildings used cloud storage. I knew which didn't. And I knew Derek's firm used a third-party server they never cleaned. So that morning, while everyone thought I was repairing a panel in an old elevator system, I was actually patching into archived building footage from 2 weeks ago. I fast-forwarded through hours of nothing, just desks and coffee breaks, until I found it. Camille, in a dark pencil skirt, bending over the glass conference table, and Derek, entering the frame behind her, like a villain in a bad soap opera. He closed the blinds. They forgot the camera was above the TV mount, not on the ceiling. I had them. Clear. Time-stamped. Undeniable. I exported the clip, backed it up twice, uploaded one to a dummy Google Drive, and titled the file something boring. Q2 planning sheet revised. I wasn't going to release it. Not yet. But I needed them to know I could. I wanted Camille to live with the fear of it. That evening, I returned to the house. Ours. Still legally shared. Still full of furniture I built and photos I now hated. Camille was already home. She was sitting on the couch with a glass of red wine, like she hadn't just detonated our marriage 48 hours ago. She didn't look surprised to see me. "You humiliated me," she said, her voice cold and small. I dropped my keys on the table. "You destroyed me." She scoffed. "I made a mistake." "No," I corrected. "A mistake is buying the wrong milk. What you did was a campaign." She stood up, stepping closer. "I didn't love him." "Don't lie to me now," I said. "Lie to yourself if you want, but don't you dare insult me with that." She opened her mouth, then shut it again. The pause lasted longer than it should have. "I want to fix this," she said finally, her voice cracking for the first time. "I swear, Emmett, I held up a hand. "I'm not here for apologies." She frowned. "Then why are you here?" I pulled out a folded piece of paper and laid it on the coffee table. "Legal separation. Not divorce. Not yet." She froze. "Why?" "Because I want you to sit in this," I said. "I want you to earn your freedom. You don't get to cheat and then escape the consequences in one clean break." Her face twisted. "This is punishment." "This," I said, nodding, "is the beginning." I turned and headed for the stairs. She shouted after me, "What the hell does that mean?" I paused halfway up, looked over my shoulder, and said calmly, "It means check your email tomorrow." And she should have, because what she'd find in her inbox wasn't hate mail. It was worse. It was a job application, mine, sent directly to her company's HR. Attached was a statement detailing inappropriate workplace behavior, coercion, and abuse of power by a senior executive, Derek, corroborated by an anonymous whistleblower, and an internal video attachment marked confidential. No accusations yet. Just a question. Does your company have a procedure for addressing this? I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. I'd let the machine eat them. One slow gear at a time. 3 days. That's how long it took before something finally cracked. 3 days of silence between me and Camille. No texts. No calls. No slamming doors. Just cold meals in the fridge and separate sides of the house. Her pacing the bedroom floor upstairs, me pretending to watch TV downstairs with the volume on mute, listening for any sign of collapse. I didn't have to wait long. On the morning of the 4th day, she burst into the living room holding her phone in one hand, her hair wild and unbrushed, her eyes lined with red. "What the hell did you do?" she snapped. I didn't answer immediately. I turned off the muted TV, took a slow sip of my coffee, and let the silence sit between us like a landmine. She stepped closer, voice shaking now. "Derek's under investigation. The board put him on leave. HR is combing through every file, every receipt, every meeting. His company phone got wiped remotely yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds serious." "You did this," she hissed. "I don't know how, but I know it was you." I leaned back in my chair and looked her dead in the eyes. "You helped." Her jaw locked. I could see the reality of it sinking in. She had hitched herself to a man who thought he was invincible, a man who couldn't remember what cameras he stood under or what emails he left open. And now, the empire was crumbling under its own arrogance. "Do you know what this means for me?" she asked. "If he goes down, I go down too. They'll think I was in on it, complicit." I shrugged. "That's between you and your HR department." "You don't get it," she yelled. "This wasn't just an affair. We had a plan. We were going to start our own firm. He promised to fund it, mentor me through the transition. I was going to be head of sales and acquisitions." And there it was. The truth, not just the betrayal, but the ambition behind it. She wasn't just sleeping with Derek. She was leveraging him. She had used my loyalty as her emotional safety net while building a future with a man she thought was her ticket out. It was greed. Cold, calculated greed. Dressed in lipstick and fake apologies. I stood up slowly and walked past her toward the door. She followed me, practically breathing fire. "Where are you going?" she demanded. I turned slightly. "To drop off a flash drive." "Flash drive? What's on it?" "Insurance." She blocked the door with her body. "You're bluffing." I smiled at her, the kind of smile you give someone who still thinks the chess game is winnable after you've already taken their queen 3 moves ago. "Then you have nothing to worry about." She didn't move. She just stood there, breathing hard, shaking with anger, guilt, and a cocktail of emotions I used to beg her to share with me, back when I was still trying to save this marriage. Now, I wanted her to drown in every last drop. I didn't actually go to HR that morning. That flash drive was already in the hands of someone far more dangerous, a journalist named Vanessa Price. Vanessa and I went to high school together. We weren't close. I was the weird vending machine kid, and she was already publishing poetry in the town paper. But last year, we crossed paths again when she interviewed my company about labor violations. She remembered me. When I sent her the Q2 planning sheet file under a burner alias, she replied in 2 hours. Is this what I think it is? I confirmed. Gave her permission to verify it. She replied again. Give me 3 days. And now those 3 days were up. I sat in my car outside her small editorial office on Lincoln Avenue, watching her through the glass as she leaned over a desk full of printouts and red pen edits. When she saw me, she waved me in. Your wife's company's about to go through hell, she said as I walked in. But Derek? He's going to wish he only lost his job. I swallowed. You're sure? She nodded, serious. This isn't just an affair. He approved purchases through shell vendors he controls. There's unreported gifts, paid retreats listed as client workshops, and one wire transfer from the company card to a hotel in Turks and Caicos during a week when your wife was also logged out of Slack for flu recovery. She clicked open a folder of images. Photos, screenshots, receipts, even a blurry image of Camille and Derek in the background of a guest's Instagram story, laughing by the pool. It was airtight. When do you run the story? I asked. Midnight. Front page. She nodded. And I already emailed it to his board for comment. I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted to stand up and shout. I won. But instead, all I felt was hollow. Because there's no real winning in betrayal. There's just surviving it. And even when you expose them, even when you pull their dirty secrets into the sun and make them squirm, there's still a part of you that remembers what it was like to believe in them. That's the part that hurts the longest. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, lights off, staring at the front door. Camille came home after 11 p.m. She walked in slowly, like she wasn't sure if I'd be waiting with a suitcase or a lawyer. I didn't say a word. I just turned my phone screen toward her. It was open to the news site. Headline in bold font. Real estate power couple implicated in scandal. Sex, fraud, and severance. Her knees buckled. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "What have you done?" I stared at her, my voice low, even. "What you taught me." Camille didn't speak to me for 2 days after the article went live. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, it's haunted. She moved through the house like a ghost with her own body still attached, barely eating, barely sleeping, jumping at every phone vibration. I think she thought I'd broken her life in one bold strike. And maybe I had. But she didn't understand the real damage yet. Because the public scandal, the HR chaos, the news coverage, the boardroom interrogations, that was just the opening act. That was the spark. The fire hadn't even started yet. What I really wanted was to change how she saw me. I didn't want Camille to just lose everything. I wanted her to live inside a world where I was no longer the fragile, convenient, safe fallback. I wanted her to feel what it was like to stand next to a man who could burn down her future while making her beg him not to. I wanted her to doubt herself, forever. That's when I started phase 2. The night after the article dropped, I asked her to meet me on the porch. It was late. The street was silent. I sat on the steps, beer in hand, staring out at nothing. She opened the screen door and stood there like a widow at her own funeral. "I'm not apologizing again," she said quietly. "Didn't ask you to." She stepped out and sat beside me. She looked thinner than she had a week ago. Her cheekbones sharper. Makeup smudged, or maybe just remnants from hours ago. "My phone won't stop ringing," she muttered. "I think I'm going to lose my license." I nodded. "Probably." She rubbed her hands together like they were cold, even though it was still warm out. "I was selfish," she said. "I was cruel. But Emmett, you're not innocent either." I turned my head slowly. "Say that again?" She didn't flinch. "You let me treat you like wallpaper. You let me build a double life. You watched me fall in love with another man and said nothing until you could weaponize it." I paused, processing her words. Then I smiled. "You're right." She looked startled. She expected denial. Or anger. Maybe guilt. But I just sipped my beer and nodded again. "I let you. Because I knew exactly how this would end." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I reached into my pocket and handed her a small envelope. Unsealed. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A printed copy of the contract I had just signed with her company's biggest competitor. A private tech firm looking to expand into commercial real estate, and in need of a compliance consultant with technical access to several local firms' back-end systems. A role I now held. Her mouth fell open. You applied there? I shrugged. They approached me. After the story broke. Her voice dropped. You used me. Correction, I said. I outgrew you. She stared at the paper like it had teeth. Why would they hire you? She whispered. You're not in real estate. They didn't want a broker, I said. They wanted someone with access, leverage, documentation. Her face drained. You gave them files? Just the ones they asked for. Ethical boundaries and all. She stood up abruptly, panic taking over. You can't do this. I stood too slowly. Camille, I already did. She took a shaky step back. You said you didn't want to ruin me. I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who once smiled while pouring me coffee, who used to sit on my lap in the back seat of my beat-up Honda, who now couldn't even meet my eyes without flinching. I don't want to ruin you, I said softly. I want you to know I never needed you. That was the first time she cried. Not when I exposed her affair. Not when Derek was suspended. Not when her name was smeared across 5 different real estate gossip blogs. No, it was that moment. When she realized the version of me she'd kept in a cage was now flying straight through the sky, with her old life in his claws. The next day, I moved out. Not with a suitcase. Not with drama. Just a single backpack and a storage unit key. I didn't even leave a note. She wasn't worth the ink. But before I left, I changed the Wi-Fi password to a phrase she would definitely try to guess. Yellow cat smile in his lap. And I smiled all the way down the driveway. It took him longer than I expected. Almost 2 weeks of silence. Then, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, I got the call. Unknown number. Blocked ID. I picked up anyway. I didn't need caller ID to know who it was. The voice on the other end was shaking with the kind of fake calm people use when they've already lost and are trying to negotiate terms with the executioner. Emmett, Derek said. We need to talk. Man to man. Man to man. That's what he said. Like he hadn't spent the last 6 months screwing my wife and calling me that repair guy behind closed doors. I didn't say anything. He kept going. I don't care about Camille. I swear to God, I don't. She's a goddamn liability now, and everyone knows it. But you, what you did. The article? The files? You don't understand what kind of doors you opened. Still, I said nothing. His voice cracked. I'm going to lose my licenses. I have regulatory boards crawling through 10 years of filings. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. You're playing with fire, man. I finally spoke. You sound scared. Silence. Then, you're not even in this world. You don't know the people I know. You think this ends with a headline? They'll bury you if you don't back off. And there it was. The desperation. The power fantasy unraveling at the edges. I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. Derek, I've already been buried. You just never looked deep enough to realize I dug my way out. He growled something unintelligible and hung up. I set the phone down, calmly, and poured myself a coffee. It was happening faster than I thought. The panic, the cracks, the erosion of that smug persona, it was delicious. Derek wasn't afraid of losing Camille. He was afraid of losing the mask he'd spent a decade polishing in front of his clients and investors. And now, I'd forced him to live without it. But what he didn't know was, I wasn't finished yet. Because while Derek was unraveling in private, Camille was still trying to glue together whatever shreds of her professional life remained. And she had no idea that I had just been offered a speaking spot at an industry compliance panel, an event hosted by a firm her former agency had tried to buy out just last year. I didn't even have to apply. They invited me. Because people don't want clean, they want cleaners. And right now, that's what I was. The panel was held in a downtown conference hall, sleek and modern, all glass and brushed steel. I showed up in a black suit I bought on clearance with Derek's name stitched into the dry cleaner's tag. A small touch, but it felt poetic. The talk was short, 15 minutes about data transparency in vendor transactions. Dry, sure, but powerful when you consider half the room knew exactly what I'd exposed. After the applause, a woman from one of the sponsoring firms handed me her card and said, "You're not what I expected." I told her neither was my wife. I was halfway through packing up when I heard someone behind me clear their throat. I turned. Camille. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Designer coat, messy bun, eyes hollow. She didn't belong here anymore, and she knew it. You've made your point, she said. I tilted my head. Which one? That you're better off without me. That you're smarter than I gave you credit for. That you can destroy people and smile while doing it. I said nothing. She stepped closer. You've burned everything. Derek's a pariah. I lost 2 contracts this week because they don't want the heat. The brokerage firm that wanted to hire me ghosted me mid-process. I nodded. Actions have consequences. She took a deep breath, swallowing whatever pride she still had. I need your help. Now that was something I didn't expect. I raised an eyebrow. You want my help? I know you don't owe me anything, she said quickly. But if there's anything left of the version of you that used to love me, please. She didn't say it out loud, but I knew what she meant. She wanted me to make a call to one of the firms, to clear her name, or at least remove my shadow from her file. I studied her for a long time. I looked at the woman who used to run my life like a calendar, who used to make me feel like I should be grateful just to exist in her orbit, who used to lean on Derek for power while treating me like emotional wallpaper. I finally leaned forward. You want my help? I said. She nodded. I took out my wallet, pulled out a business card, and held it between 2 fingers. She reached for it, but I didn't let go right away. You will never see me the same after this, I said. You will never look in the mirror again without hearing my voice in your head. You will wonder, every time someone hires you, whether I was behind it, whether I lifted you up or pulled the strings to keep you down. Her lips parted. Why would you do that? I let go of the card. Because now you'll finally know what it's like to live in someone else's shadow. And I walked away. Not triumphant. Not smug. Just free. 2 weeks passed after the panel. The world kept turning, but slower, like it had just weathered a storm and wasn't quite sure how to spin at full speed again. Derek had vanished from the public eye completely. No statements. No lawsuits. Just gone. Like a ghost who realized no one believed in him anymore. Camille, from what I heard through a mutual acquaintance, had moved in with her sister. Word was, she was trying to find work out of state. She needed a fresh start, as if geography could bleach her soul clean. And me? I was floating somewhere between peace and emptiness. The revenge had landed. The fallout had burned its way through their lives like wildfire. But now that the smoke had cleared, I was left standing in silence, surrounded by the ashes of a life I didn't even want back. Then, on a Thursday morning, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a small leather notebook, soft, old, weathered. My name was written inside the front cover in Camille's handwriting. I almost threw it out. Almost. But something made me sit down and read it. And once I did, I couldn't stop. It wasn't a diary. Not really. It was more like confessions. Scattered paragraphs. Sentences written in the margins. No dates. No order. Just emotion bleeding onto paper. Some pages were venomous. He stopped seeing me. Years before I ever looked at Derek. He stared through me like I was wallpaper. Like I was just the background of his life. Some were pitiful. Sometimes I wished he would scream. Anything. Just to know I still had the power to hurt him. And others were something else entirely. If he ever leaves, I don't know who I am without someone to disappoint. I read every word. And when I finished, I sat there for a long time, staring at the floor. Not because I forgave her. I didn't. Not because I wanted her back. I never would. But because I realized something that no amount of revenge could cover up. We were both broken long before Derek entered the picture. We just broke differently. She shattered outward, inflicting pain, manipulating power, setting fire to the people who loved her most. And me? I collapsed inward, swallowing silence, absorbing guilt, pretending everything was fine until it poisoned my own reflection. Derek didn't break our marriage. He just walked in and found it already in ruins. That night, I wrote a letter. Not for Camille. For me. I wrote about the way I used to flinch when she walked past me without a glance. About the nights I stayed awake rehearsing how to ask if she still loved me, and the mornings I swallowed the words because I didn't want to hear the answer. I wrote about how I let myself become small because it was easier than competing for space in her world. And then I wrote something I never expected to say out loud. I'm sorry I didn't walk away sooner. I thought love meant staying, even when you're dying inside. I know better now. I sealed the letter in an envelope, wrote no name on it, and burned it in the kitchen sink. Then I deleted every file, photo, and audio recording I had backed up over the past 6 months. Not out of mercy, out of closure. This wasn't my identity anymore. It was a phase, a war I didn't want to fight again. The next morning, I booked a flight to Portland. Not because I had anyone there, just because I'd never seen the Pacific Ocean. I figured maybe standing at the edge of something that big would help remind me how small all this had been in the grand scheme. But before I left, I got one last message. Not from Camille. From Derek. A single text. You think this is over? I still have things I can use. You went too far. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed 2 words. Prove it. He never replied. Portland was colder than I expected. Not the biting kind of cold. More like a polite chill that sat on your skin and made you notice the wind. I landed just after sunrise, grabbed a rental car, and drove until I found a beach with almost no one on it. Cannon Beach, I think. I didn't care about the name. I stood on the shore for a long time, hands in my pockets, breathing in the salt air. The water stretched endlessly in front of me. The kind of horizon that makes you realize how small your pain really is. How temporary everything can be. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fall to my knees like in some movie climax. I just stood there, quiet, finally hearing my own thoughts again. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't angry. They weren't obsessed with revenge or replays of the betrayal or what I could have done differently. They were peaceful because I knew who I was again. Not Camille's husband. Not Derek's shadow. Not the man who plotted quietly in the dark. Just Emmett, a guy who fixes broken things. I stayed in Portland for 6 days. Walked more than I drove. Talked to strangers. Ate food I couldn't pronounce. Wrote in a notebook with no agenda. I didn't take a single photo. I wanted the memories to live in my head, not my phone. On day 5, I got a voicemail from my old shift supervisor, Randy. Hey man, heard what happened. You're kind of a legend around here now. Thought you should know, corporate finally audited all the upper floor billing. Let's just say, you weren't the only one watching. If you ever want your old job back, or anything better, give me a call. I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back, either, because something else had found me. On day 6, I met a man named Leo in a coffee shop just off the pier. He was in his 60s, wore a flannel shirt and an eye patch, and had a way of speaking that made every sentence sound like a story. He saw me writing and asked what I was working on. I told him, the wreckage of my life. He laughed. Good. Wreckage makes better art than perfection. We talked for hours. I told him everything. Not the names, not the details, just the shape of it all. He listened. Didn't offer solutions. At one point, he said, you ever think maybe you were meant to survive it? Survive what? All of it. The betrayal. The burning. The silence. Maybe it didn't happen to you. Maybe it happened for you. It hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Maybe it had. I came back home 10 days after I left. The house was quiet. Empty now. Camille was gone, for good this time. She'd left her keys on the table with a short note that just said, I don't deserve forgiveness. I hope you find peace. See, I didn't text her back. I didn't need to. Some things are better left unsaid. I sold the house 3 weeks later. Used the money to start something small, my own independent tech consulting business. Compliance, system security, audits. The stuff nobody wanted to talk about, but everyone eventually needed. It took time, but it grew. Clients started coming in, then referrals, then partnerships, then respect. Not fear, not pity, respect. One morning, 6 months later, I found myself at a coffee shop, different town, same kind of pier. The girl behind the counter smiled and asked what I did for a living. I said, I help people prevent disasters before they happen. She laughed. That's poetic. Sometimes, I said, they still happen anyway. She handed me my coffee. Well, you look like someone who's been through one and lived. I smiled. Because I had. That night, I wrote a final line in my notebook, the same one I started on that beach in Portland. She sat on his lap thinking she'd won. I walked away holding the blueprint for my next life. And this time, I wasn't looking back.